Thank you so much, first of all. My name is Dave.
Hey, Dave.
Hey, Dave.
What I've understood is the core principle of growth is finding the right people and building the leadership and the culture of, building more and more leaders. So if somebody has to build a leadership team or the culture of leadership, what advice would you give to somebody like me to build a leadership culture, finding right people, take more decisions?
Yeah, good questions, Dave. So first of all, I joined YPO, which I think you're a part of, years ago. I'm no longer in it. I gave the spot to Eric, my president. But when I joined, I went and met with all these other young presidents across the country or North America who had run businesses that were $1 billion or bigger. And I asked them the question, what's the hardest? Is it $1 million, 10 million, 100, or $1 billion? And everyone's like, $1 billion's the easiest. Every person without exception. And I said, why is that? And they said, well, $1 million is the hardest because it's the first copy. You're trying to figure out the systems. You're trying to figure out if it even works. And you're making lots of mistakes and losing money. 10 million, 100, $1 billion, it gets easier because of the culture, the team you're building. You're not doing everything anymore. You focus in on what you do extremely or exceptionally well, and you let others go. So it's interesting that you've obviously done your research and you've learned that $1 billion's the easiest, but it's getting there through all the hard times with a culture of leadership and great people. Recruiting people at $1 million in sales, very different people than the ones at $1 billion. I mean, I couldn't have afforded Eric Church when we were $1 million in revenue, nor would he have been interested in the type of business we were building. Cameron Harold, who came in from 2 to 106, was a great friend, gave me a deal on compensation until things got bigger and better. He was bought in, he was fly by the seat of his pants. What worked to help us get to where we needed to go stopped working. And that's where you ultimately end up making changes, which aren't easy. So I think the advice of how do you build a culture that you want, we came up with our values: passion, integrity, professionalism, and empathy. We actually sat down as an 8-person team at about $1 million in revenue. We took Post-it notes and we were on a little retreat and we put them all up in the windows of the place we stayed. And I told everyone to write a word that describes, or write words that describe who we already are. Not who we're trying to be or want to be, but just write them down.
Our DNA kind of.
Yeah, 400 words. We grouped them together, similar words, and it came out to be passion, integrity, professionalism, and empathy.
Yeah.
When recruiting people, do they fit our values of pipe? If they don't have passion, they're not right for us. Doesn't mean they're not a good person, but we want people that show up that go, I love this business, I love my team. Empathy. If someone can't cut someone slack and go, Dan, why did you just mess that up? You failed again.
Blaming
again,
each other,
right? Yeah, we want people to have a heart and deal with things with grace. So know your values. And I've seen people go out and do the values exercise like what we did. The key is when you've got the right people as a smaller company, say a 3 million revenue company, how do you involve the people who are the right people in saying, what are our values? What values attracted you here that we possess? It's not coming up with values that you want to be. They have to be what's already a part of, as you said, DNA and inside you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
My name's Endrick.
Hi, Hendrik.
Nice to meet you.
So I've got a question. I'm currently running 3 businesses in real estate. So I've got an investment model where I take on rent-to-rent properties. I've got a mentoring company, and I'm also sourcing properties to investors. Now, I'm only at 6 figures at the moment. I'm just a bit confused because I'm trying to run 3 businesses. There's one business I prefer than the other, which is making me most of the money, which is the mentoring company. Do I stick to that and throw the others away, or do I continue to try grow all 3 businesses?
Yeah, I can't tell you what to do, but my opinion from my experience is focus trumps running 3 businesses. I mean, when you said, running 3 businesses is confusing, I'm like, yeah, 3 businesses is confusing because they're all very different.
Because
real
Brian,
estate,
like,
mentoring.
you focus on 1-800 Gachong for how many years before you even Shine and all that?
22 years before we added One Day.
Yeah. Added another franchise, other brands.
Yeah.
22 years, one thing.
And we have had leaders go between our brands, one that's worked with Wow One Day and then went to Shine, that kind of thing. And they're like, you know what? It's the same business. So while for us we can go, oh, I'm running 3 different businesses. First of all, we have a managing director or a president owning the P&L, running that business fully. It sounds to me like if you're making the 120 pounds, 1,000 pounds, you're running each of the brands yourself. Yeah, I think dedicated leadership, dedicated focus is incredibly important. And it's certainly never worked for us when we've tried to do other things. We got into the roll-off container business, 1-800-GOT-JUNK. We were about 10 years into the business.
Yeah.
And it was different enough because you're dropping off these big cans, you then come pick them up, people would beat them up, light them on fire, all sorts of things would happen to these. It wasn't the friendly, uniformed 2 truck team members that come into someone's house and sweep up.
Yeah.
That was a service business. The roll-off container business was really just a commodity.
Commodity, yeah.
And so we decided to focus, and after 3 years, pulled the chute on it and said, we're done.
Even though you might think it's kind of the same category, but just that one step away, it's too different.
Totally.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of these companies like DoorDash and Uber Eats, and they go, hey, we're sending people to someone's home, picking up something from one location and sending it. Well, let's deliver, let's be a courier. Let's deliver groceries. Let's deliver pharmacare. Let's deliver everything. And I think it dilutes the brand. Maybe they'll figure it out like Amazon did. I mean, I guess you get to a certain size where you just go, yeah, Amazon can be all things to all people. They started in books, and if they hadn't stayed focused in books for so long, I don't know that Bezos would have gotten to where he got.
I agree.
That's where my confusion is. Is it a smart idea, because I'm still at a low scale, to go and work with someone who's got more experience and has built this massive business, or do I continue with my mentoring company alone?
Do you know many people in your circle that have had success having 2 families?
No.
I think in the early days, while you're building a business, you're building a family, whatever you're doing, you go all in. Doesn't mean, and I don't mean to say, obviously different examples where someone's not being loyal. I'm not saying you're not being loyal by having a second business, but you're not being focused on going, my business, pick one family that you just go, hey, I'm all in, I'm gonna grow it, I'm gonna give it time. I mean, I thought about all these different ideas in my own business when I was the first 8 years getting to $1 million. I thought there was a shortcut. There wasn't a shortcut. I needed time and I needed to focus. So, just my perspective. Yeah, thank you.
Hey Brian, I'm Patrick.
Hey Patrick.
I love your calm and confident demeanor. It like really inspires me. Like, oh man, like Brian's just like another guy. Like, I think I can get to Brian's level one day. But my question for you is, you kept saying over and over again, the first $1 million is the hardest part. Specifically for you, what was that hardest part? How did you overcome it?
Yeah, I mean, the first $1 million was the hardest by far because I was everything. I needed to hire people. I needed to do payroll. I needed to cover when anyone was sick and canceled and couldn't come to work. I had to sometimes answer phones. I had to throw myself in the trucks. I just had to do it all. I had a cell phone 24/7 and people were always calling me, and so I didn't have time to be creative. I didn't have time to work on scaling. If anyone's ever read the book, The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, it talks about build your business out like a franchise, because franchises succeed at a higher level than a non-franchise business because of the systems, the processes, teaching people how to replicate your success.
Yeah.
And when you're so small and you can't get yourself out of the business to work on the business versus working in it, you get caught in a vicious cycle. And so if you don't break out of past the $1 million, it's a challenge. 10 million, I shifted from being a junk removal company to being in the franchise business.
Yeah.
And it was trying to figure that out.
Yes.
So I would get
just
franchise
providing
owners.
service, but to selling a business opportunity, right?
Yeah, and franchise owners would say, this doesn't work in my city.
Yeah.
My city's different.
Yeah.
And I'd say, give it time. It's like Paul Guy when he told me that the city will take anything for free. Well, maybe they will, but have you tried this? And it requires focus, faith, and effort. People have to really work your systems hard. And if they're not following the recipe that we've created based on proof, on a proven model, they can ultimately fail. And we've had people fail. And most of the smart ones will literally sit there and be like, you told me to do this, but I didn't, and I understand why I failed. It's a tough gig growing a business. But we get to do this. We had interviewed a friend of mine, Robert Herjavec, who's on the Dragon's Den, Shark Tank and all that, great guy. And he was at one of our conferences, and I interviewed him, and I said, what advice do you have for entrepreneurs working through all these different stages? Ups and downs, roller coaster, things go wrong, you almost lose the business. He's like, remember, we get to do this. And it's an absolute privilege and honor to be able to run a business and go, we get to hire people, train them, give them opportunity, help them make money. But you got to have the right attitude in doing it, I think.
Awesome. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.